You are listening to Larry Conners, USA.
You want answers?
I think I'm entitled.
You want answers?
I want the truth!
You can't handle the truth!
This is Larry Conners USA. Larry Conners USA.
I woke up this morning, got myself a gun. Mama always said I'd be the chosen one.
When it mattered most, when the Chinese were covering this up in early January of 2020, Dr. Fauci, you certainly would have seen the same intelligence that I saw. We would certainly have known that the risk that this came from the laboratory was real. We would have known that the Chinese Communist Party didn't want any of us to know that, and that raised red flags throughout the entire United States government for far too long. Dr. Fauci let those of us who were out there talking about it carry the mantle, and we couldn't get science. We got politics instead, and that's what you saw in the left-wing media. You saw politics trumping science, and that delayed our capacity to respond to what the Chinese Communist Party foisted upon the world.
June the 4th, 2021, those words direct from former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. We heard the left, and at that time the mainstream media, constantly condemning Trump and his supporters. You're not following the science. You're letting politics get involved. We now know it was just the opposite. Trump was trying to follow the science. Pompeo was trying to follow the science. They had suspicions, but Dr. Fauci was not being fully candid with them, and certainly the Chinese weren't, not to mention the World Health Organization. Pompeo says these thousands of emails that have now been gathered through a Freedom of Information Act by BuzzFeed and Washington Post are unveiling just how much Fauci was keeping from us. He is charged, of course, to help with assisting and protecting Americans. But as it turned out, he loved being the left-wing darling. He never directly criticized Trump. You have to give him that. He knew how to play the game, never really came right out and said, Trump is wrong. He just kind of danced around it. But they got the message. You know, it's a little wink-wink. I got it. I know what you're saying. Now, Dr. Fauci is finally, according to the Financial Times, putting in a request direct to China. What does he want? He says, I would like to see the medical records of the 3 people who are reported to have gotten sick in 2019. Did they really get sick? And if so, what did they get sick with? That's why he ended it with a preposition. So be it. He's a scientist. Now, he is talking about those 3 scientists that the New York Times reported a couple of weeks ago. They got sick, went to the hospital weeks before we began to hear the first breaks of COVID. And that time, the Chinese government would say, no, they all came down with the flu, just came down with the flu at the same time. Now, Fauci is asking for, I'd like to see the medical records of them. Now? Why? Well, because he's in the crosshairs right now of everyone is angry at what's been going on, not only in this nation, but around the world. Not just the deaths and the suffering in this nation, but around the world. If Fauci had been doing his job as he should have been and not kowtowing and kind of protecting any conflicts of interest he had, we would have all gotten this information maybe sooner, maybe not, but at least we'd all been on the same page rather than constantly looking for a way and giving a weapon to the left to demonize Donald Trump and those who are raising questions that China's got to be responsible for this. It's Wuhan virus. And by the way, Mike Pompeo has a dire and a very scary warning about that lab. We'll get into that before we wrap up over the next 2 hours. China, in the meantime, grand theft of American intel. Grand theft from our corporations, our government. China making moves to get into space. How much is that going to hurt us? China on our campus. What are they doing? And inside U.S. corporations. We'll be joined by Lee Edwards with the Heritage Foundation with some background details of what's taking place because it is scary. And, of course, we have the Russian hacking still underway, much less China hacking. President Biden's supposed to have a meeting with Putin? Is he really going to get tough or just kind of, I would like you to stop? Can you? Please? And then the former Vice President, Mike Pence, gave a speech last night that leftists are rushing forward and say, look what he did. Mike Pence just gutted any chance of Donald Trump returning in 2024, gutted any chance of any Republican winning in 2024. What did Mike Pence say? We've got that for you. And supersonic jets that could get you from New York to London in less than 3.5 hours. They might be coming back. One airline already putting an order in. It's all coming up over the next 2 hours. Lock and load. Ready on the right.
You can email Larry at LarryConnersUSA@gmail.com. LarryConnersUSA@gmail.com.